Fortune versus ISP. That particular case, I represent myself. I got. Remember I said a little while ago that part of my plea deal in that first case was I would get ISP. So I did get ISP. I did 17 months, and then 4 months later, ISP locked me up because I made commercials, and I put commercials on TV around here, and they said that I was advocating criminal activity. And my argument, I got a pissing contest with my ISP officer about free speech. So to trump him,
he revoked you because of the commercials?
So I made commercials, and I put the commercials on Comcast, and he revoked my parole and said that I was advocating criminal activity. And I'm like, no, I was exercising free speech, and you never lose your right to free speech. I don't care. I can be in prison. I can be under the prison. I can have a noose on my neck about ready to fucking hang me, and I can say whatever the fuck I want to say. Like, you don't lose your civil rights at the prison gates. And I wasn't even in prison no more. I was home on parole. But when me and him got to the pissing contest about what I could talk about and couldn't talk about, I was trumping him really. And I made these commercials, and I put them on Comcast, and he retaliated by having me locked up. I retaliated further by filing a federal writ of habeas corpus. 99.9% of all federal writs of habeas corpus is thrown out before you get to the first hearing. But I happen to know about Judge Arenas in Camden County. Judge Arenas' pet thing was he was a federal judge in Camden. I knew about his case. I knew about him because he had represented a couple Muslims in a couple free speech cases, right? So I knew he understood free speech. So from jail, when they was revoking my parole, they was about ready to send me to prison, and I wrote in jail. I wrote a writ of habeas corpus and mailed it to him, and said I was in prison for making commercials, free speech, this, that, and the other. I cited certain cases, North Carolina versus right now I can't think of the name of the case, but anyway, I knew these free speech cases, and I sent it like, yo, the state of Jersey is being more egregious than Turner versus North Carolina. Then this case, Turner versus North Carolina. I said, and after I sent it, I got a letter back from the judge one day, prison mail. Fortune legal, I remember. It said, Fortune, you got legal mail. I was all happy. When I got it, I opened it, and it was a letter from the judge, and the judge said, Mr. Fortune, blah, 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 blah. I do not accept direct mail. You cannot send me a letter, send me a brief, send me litigation directly to me, the judge. You have to send it to the court clerk. So here I'm sending your letter back, and my habeas corpus is back. I was so crushed all night I couldn't sleep. The next morning, Fortune, legal mail. This time, it's from the federal court clerk. I open it. Mr. Fortune, your writ of habeas corpus has been accepted by Judge Arenas. Like, what? What? Evidentiary hearing scheduled for next Thursday. What? Like I said, most of them are thrown out right away. Very few get to court. Not only did I get to court, but the federal judge ordered me to be taken out of Camden County, out of Burlington County Jail to the federal court. The judge, the New Jersey, because of the feds jumped in it, the Attorney General's office had to represent the state. So the Attorney General's office represented and tried to tell the judge that he had no jurisdiction in this case. This is a state case, and he has not exhausted his state appeals, so we can't, you can't do nothing here. You have no jurisdiction. The judge took offense at that, and the judge ordered them to write a brief explaining that. Gave him like 25 days to do it. They did it. Then he ordered, and then after he did it, he said that he thinks that I win in this. This is free speech. And if they don't give another reason why I should remain in prison in the next 20 days or something like that, that he would order me released. They did some appeal or something like that. But anyway, one day, I hear on the news, it was January, I was in jail. I didn't even hear the news yet. And it was January 24th, that's all I remember.
Right.
And the judge said, and I hear it on the radio first. And then a few minutes later, all the guards was like, yo, you won, you're out. And later on that night, I won that case too. And that case, right now to this day, is used by prisoners as a free speech case all across the country. It's called Fortune versus ISP. If you're in jail, you're in prison, and you got some type of free speech argument, they cite my case. It's called Shepherdizer, if you don't know.
Because of your exploits, you kind of like a folk hero.
Among certain people, I am.
For sure.
If you follow certain things, certain arguments, you'll catch me. Yeah. You can't Google New Jersey or marijuana in New Jersey without me popping up anyway. I become the face of marijuana in New Jersey, whether the cannabaggers like it or not.
No doubt.
You know, especially from the black market standpoint of view, or from a little guy standpoint of view. You know, like yeah, there's Curaleaf and there's all these big corporations that are coming here and they're opening up places and they're calling it the weed. You know, the way I look at cannabis, by the way, I don't use cannabis very often. I use marijuana most of the time. I might go ganja herb, but cannabis to me means Caucasian acceptable marijuana. I went to prison for marijuana. Everybody know I went to prison for marijuana. You look up any federal statutes, any state statutes for marijuana, they're still there. And now they created this new thing called cannabis, which we all know it's the same plant, but cannabis means Caucasian acceptable marijuana. Even in the state of New Jersey, just recently talked about it, New Jersey just legalized cannabis. They ain't legalized marijuana. Words mean something. In our state statutes right now, they didn't remove it. They didn't go through the whole statute, just change all the words. The cannabis, no. Legally, if you get caught with a whole bunch of weed that did not come from the state regulated system, you're still going to get charged with possession of a CDS, possession of marijuana. Possession of possession of regulated cannabis is now legal. So these new legal places, ultimately what they're going to get to is this era, which they think they're going to get to, where these cannabis corporations are legal and people dealing with marijuana are still going to be illegal. And the only difference really is cannabis is produced by these licensed corporations. They're sanctioned by the state. And if you look at the CEOs of each one of those corporations, they're rich white men. So for me to call them the Caucasian cannabis cartels, and you know, cannabis is the Caucasian acceptable marijuana. So that's why you won't very rarely hear me say cannabis. It's marijuana.
No doubt. You told me you essentially started out smoking in like 1990 coming out of the service.
I was smoking before that. I really started smoking. That was when I got into the whole black market thing.
Okay.
But no, I started smoking weed when I was like 15, something like that. And there was little periods of time I didn't smoke. Like when I was in the Army, I very rarely smoked. When I got out of the Army in 91, that was all I wanted to do.
Right.
Smoke weed. My dad was a truck driver when I was a kid, so when I got out of the Army, that's what I wanted to do. Boom, bought a truck, was coast to coast to it. And it ain't take long for me to end up in Phoenix, Arizona, and finding out I can buy a pound of weed there for less than $500. Knowing good well, I brought it back to New Jersey, it was $1,200. And I'll never forget, I took $3,000 of my truck money and I bought weed. Back up. I took $1,500 of my truck money and I bought 3 pounds of weed. I brought it back here and I sold all of them for $1,200, I think. I took that $3,000, went back, bought 10 pounds of weed, and I did it back and forth. It took me a couple weeks, but it took me a couple months, but you never take your flip money and use it for something else. That's what happened. Boom. So next thing I know, I was working with $30,000. I was doing I got up to like 100 pounds of weed back and forth from Arizona. That's what I got caught on when I had the 40-pound case. I got caught. That's how I got caught. But throughout the 90s, I was really smuggling. That's how I didn't sell on the street. I went to Arizona. I picked up hundreds of pounds of weed. I brought it back to Camden. And from Camden, it went to different towns. But boom. And that was what I did throughout the 90s. Until 97, I got caught with the 40 pounds.
Did you consider that weed would get to a point where you couldn't even hide the shit no more because of the smell? This and what you was getting from Arizona in the 90s, two different things. Did you see it progressing to, it's like 50, 60, hundreds of different strains now? And
no, here's what happened to me. From the time I was a kid, it was brown Mexican weed. We didn't know no better. I remember hearing my uncles and friends, my uncles and family talking about Acapulco Red and this, that, and the other, Panama this, and the Thai stick that. I remember hearing them all talk about that, but all we was getting in the 80s was Mexican swag. When I first got out of the Army, I was going to Arizona, that's all I was getting. The thing that changed in Arizona was all of a sudden, because I know the history, in the state of Sonora in Mexico, they started trying to grow better weed and started growing green nugs, which when we would get it in Arizona, and you'd bring it back here, and everyone called it AZ. I don't know if you remember that in the 90s. Yeah. Everybody called it because it was that green weed coming out of Sonora in New Mexico. But once I got a hold of that, I said, whoa, this is better. And at some point, somebody told me that you can get better weed in California, and I ended up in Oakland. Again, I was a truck driver. I just got me a load there. Whenever I used to want to go somewhere, I want to go to Seattle, I want to go to Phoenix, I just get a load there. So I got a load to Oakland one time, and when I got there, I went looking for weed, and this young dude, I wish I had kept in touch with him, but I wound up getting what he called Thai stick. And I remember it wasn't Thai stick, because later I saw real and experienced real Thai stick, but it was some very, very good weed. And it came from the hills of Northern California, which made me now want to go to the hills of California. So in the mid-90s, I was going to Humboldt, I was going to Harrodsburg and all them places up in the hills where their whole communities grew weed, you know, and it was better than any weed that we got here on the East Coast. So I started bringing back good weed in the 90s, like, whoa, yo, look at this green shit. Look, this shit looks like High Times shit. And people were like, yo, that shit looks like it's from High Times, what is that? You know, and that's just because I was smuggling. And, you know, at first it started out being in Arizona, the next thing I know it was California. And then I went to Washington State too. And even to this day right now, Oregon got the best weed right now, y'all.
Word.
Oregon got it.
Make a stop out there.
You know?
I appreciate your time, man. You've been great. Again, tell them where they can find you out online.
NJWeedman.com, Instagram NJWeedman. Look up here the joint of Trenton, NJ Weedman's joint right here in Trenton, New Jersey, or the joint of Miami in Miami, because I'm splitting the time. I got off the plane this morning from Miami. 2 days from now, I'll go right back to Miami.
Keep up the good work. What's the name of the spot down there? I'm gonna come check you out on South Beach.
The joint of Miami.
The joint of Miami.
And it's in Wynwood. Wynwood is the art district of Miami.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in Wynwood.
Okay. See you soon.